I think that everyone can agree that the first Last of Us game was a masterpiece in nearly every conceivable way, and everyone wanted a follow-up game. That follow-up game ended up being very decisive, to say the least. And although the game is about 2 years old, and I'm late to that party, we may as well do this video with the show being talked about. So in this video, we are going to talk about my love-hate relationship with The Last of Us 2. So I guess the first spot we should start with is the positives. The gameplay was pretty solid. Much like the first game, and in this game not much has changed. The few additions that were introduced into it were pretty good, like the ability to dodge and to go prone. I also liked some of the new infected, like the stalkers and the shamblers. And that whole Rat King section was pretty cool, and it really, was a pretty scary boss fight, to say the least. And that's basically it for the gameplay. Because while I like the gameplay, the story in general was bad, like Terminator Dark Fate bad. So to start from the beginning of the story, it picks up 4 years after the events of the first game, and we're introduced to a new character named Abby. And she is looking for our main protagonist from the previous game, Joel. So after Joel and Tommy rescue Abby from certain death, they take her back to her friends. So basically, Joel introduces himself and Tommy, and once they introduce themselves, Abby brutally tortures and kills Joel because she knows that he killed her father at the end of the first game. One positive I have to say about all of this is it just goes to show that in this game, there is no such thing as plot armor. Because with the death of Joel, this means any main character, whether protagonist or antagonist, could just die out of the blue. However, though, this one scene I have so many issues with. To start, how does Abby know Joel's last name, especially when you consider the fact he never actually said his last name? And another thing is she never actually sees Joel in the first game. She's only going off of his name. And so when we to think about it, isn't it possible that this Joel Miller is not the actual Joel Miller? Like maybe this is a Joel Miller, but for all she knew, it was some guy who never went to that hospital to begin with. How does she know this is the guy, considering she was only going off of a lead? And who's to say that lead was accurate? And also, if Joel is such a bad guy, why would he go through the effort of saving her multiple times, even when it's very inconvenient to Joel and jeopardizes his safety and Tommy's safety? Another problem I have with the entire story was the concept of revenge is bad. For some reason, they have that where the theme is focused on Ellie realizing that revenge is bad and not Abby. This doesn't make any sense. It would have worked much better if Abby was the one who learned that revenge is bad and not Ellie, because Abby, for one, already got revenge, whereas Ellie is getting revenge. I feel like that this theme would have worked much better if they just made it where throughout the course of the game, as more and more of Abby's friends start getting killed because of what she did to Joel, it would have made more sense for Abby to then realize by the end of the game that this wasn't worth it, that it was not worth to actually kill Joel, because now all of her friends, which are very important to her, are now dropping like flies because of that. And another issue I have is Abby as a whole. Around the halfway mark of the game, they make you play as Abby again, replaying the events that happened earlier in the game after, Joel's death, but just from a different perspective. And while this is a neat concept on paper, it kind of, gets rid of the whole, oh, good guy, bad guy type mentality by making it more of a gray area. They did a really bad job at trying to make Abby less of a villain. In fact, if anything, I'd say playing as Abby after Joel's death makes me hate her even more because of her character. Like she's a bad friend to Mel because she cheats on him and cheats on Mel with Owen. And another issue I have is she doesn't show any sort of regret at all for her actions of what she did to Joel. I think one really big problem, though, probably the biggest problem with Abby, was her treatment towards those kids that came from the Scar clan. Now, their relationship starts by them rescuing Abby from certain death. And now, while I do understand, rescuing people who saved you, she goes the extra mile by constantly helping them, even long after she owed them one. So she went so far as to actually betray her own faction and leave with one of the kids, which it's like seems so left field for this character. Like, it just came out as like a huge surprise, because like, why did she rescue them multiple times? Okay, yeah, like I said before, the first time, like that first night, I understand, get them out of certain danger, at least you can do. But she just kept going and continued to help them repeatedly, and it's like, and why? Considering for one, they're a completely different faction, and throughout the game, Abby shows distaste for that faction's, beliefs and their practices and whatnot. But yet, it just doesn't make any sense. And I can't help but to think they were trying to make Abby a much more likable character to perhaps make up for how she, killed Joel in such a brutal fashion, to try to make her less of a villain. But all it really did was just seem forced. It didn't seem genuine. It seemed like someone acting nice just to look nice, on the outside. And at the final part of the game, you're playing as Ellie, and you're fighting Abby, and eventually Ellie gets the upper hand and starts drowning Abby. Now, when I was playing this, I was like, oh yeah, finally, I'm going to get revenge on this character. And then Ellie just lets Abby go. I don't get this. This ending flippin' sucks. Because think about it. Ellie has killed so many people and dogs to get to that point, and she lets Abby go. Now I know it's because, Ellie, had a happy memory of Joel, was willing to move on, was willing to give up having revenge, yada, yada, yada. But still, this doesn't make sense because, you killed so many people got killed, and for what? A therapy session? Because that seems to be a very unhealthy and very, very bloody indeed therapy session if that's the case. Now, I know someone in the comments is probably going to be like, well, what about the ending to the first game where you killed so many people to take Ellie to the hospital so that the vaccine could get developed, but instead you take Ellie away from the hospital, kill a bunch more people, and screwed humanity out of a cure? Now, while on the surface that may seem like a bad ending, much like how The Last of Us 2 ending was bad, there was ambiguity to the first ending. The game never told you what to think, how to feel, how to perceive the ending. It presented what it wanted to show you and didn't tell you if it was good or bad, Joel's decision. And when you really to think about it, with how the game was structured, you could actually come up with explanations of, was Joel in the right or was he in the wrong with his final decision. But in this game, the big problem is they're telling you Ellie moves on. Ellie gives up having revenge, and that's that. No nuance, no ambiguity, no nothing. It tells you what to think. Well, instead of showing you what it needs to show you and let you come up with your thoughts on that ending, it tries to teach you revenge is bad, whereas it doesn't teach you was Joel in the right or wrong at the end of the first game. It left that decision up to you. And that's why it's like just the story sucks. I hate the story. And there's so many other issues I haven't even mentioned. Like, how is it that Ellie could lose that map at the aquarium and never, ever, ever realize that she lost that map in the first place? Considering for Abby to go to the aquarium, see the map, and go to where Ellie and gang were hiding and do the whole boss fight, it probably would have been easily a couple hours. Considering I feel like that Abby was probably traveling mostly on foot that entire time. So that was easily several hours Ellie had to realize, oh, she lost the map. But no, she never figured that out. And that's just such a stupid, thing in the story just to get Abby to attack Ellie and gang directly, And it's just, I loved the gameplay. I love the actual game part of this. I just hate the story. And that's the question. I mean, do I love the gameplay enough to go through the story another time or two to suck it up? Or do I hate the story so much that I don't even want to play the actual game ever again? And that's kind of the problem with having the story be so big and so intertwined with the actual game. If you can make a good story, it adds extra points to the game's overall quality. But if it's like in this game where the story sucks so much, it really brings down the game's overall score, in my opinion. I mean, imagine Doom. All right, let's just say the next Doom game has an awful story. Well, that doesn't matter because while the story is presented to you, it's never forced down your face. It's not a huge part of the game where every single time you play this game, you have to watch the story. That's more of a game first and a story second. So even if the story sucks, as long as the actual gameplay is good, there we go. But in this, the story is so intertwined with the gameplay that both the gameplay and the story have to be good. Otherwise, if the story is this bad, it really takes the overall score of the game down and really makes you wonder, do I really even want to play this game again? Because the story just sucks that much. Joel and